I'm gonna
Okay.
share it.
We were on killing people with 9mm rounds. Is that where you
All right,
want us
we're
to?
live.
That's where we should start. Let's focus
Which one?
on that.
Homicide.
Your preferred bullet of choice
No.
is go.
Has anyone seen that musical 1776? And Ben Franklin or someone, maybe it's Jefferson's. You're driving me to homicide, homicide, homicide. It's good stuff. Homicide.
Yeah.
Oh, it's got Mr. Feeney in it from Boy Meets World.
Oh.
He plays one of the founding fathers. I just can't remember which one. I'm gonna look it up right now. I guess that guy is still alive.
He is. I think he's like 80 years old or something.
He's got to be like 180. He's like, there's no way
180.
that there's no way he's 80, dude. He's got to be way older than that. Shit. Musical. Okay, I was at the film. Okay, yeah. Who does he play? He plays John Adams. Okay, that was gonna be my next guess. Yeah, he's 93.
Damn.
Did he wear the wig?
Yeah, they
Oh,
all
that's
did.
amazing.
Yeah, no, when he dies, there's gonna be so much Twitter like despair.
Mr. Feeney, you were a father figure for me.
I still remember his. I'm not very good at saying goodbye. Not gonna get all sappy, are we? When I become a teacher, I'm gonna become the modern Mr. Feeney.
Nice.
You're gonna teach
Oh,
English or history?
Yeah, English. I'm
English.
very ignorant of history, as that Tulsi supporter told me. What the fuck was I gonna say? There was actually a celebrity death, a minor celebrity death that I learned about today. That I was kind of like, Tommy Heinsohn, the longtime Celtics broadcaster, died, and I was like, oh man, I liked him.
All right. So my computer is being really slow with Twitter. I think I'm fine on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are able to see it?
The YouTube video has already been flagged with the U.S. elections.
Oh yeah,
Little
they're
clip.
already like any like
Amazing.
keyword of like election, Biden or Trump. They're like AP already called the election for.
Yeah,
Biden.
even CNN gets flagged with it.
Can one of you guys tag everybody here? Because my phone is in use right now, and so is my Twitter is like really slow right now.
Okie dokie.
Thank you guys so much.
Oh, like. Okay, hang on.
Dang, so it's already over a year since you guys knew Pierce, Dak and Christy.
Dak and Pierce did their first video. I think it was like beginning of September.
Yeah, Christy did her first appearance in January.
Yeah, but we knew each other. Yeah, it would have been January. Yeah, they did videos all through the fall together.
We did.
I can't wait to bring him back on.
I know.
It sucks
I was
that
hoping he would be able to join us.
Sucks that the time difference though, like makes it a little harder. When did you meet Dak? You guys are both in the same state, right?
August last year, at the end of August, when Tulsi was, or it was the beginning of September, whenever the New Hampshire convention was, at the, what's that restaurant, the Pub in Manchester?
Oh, that fucking hellhole. That's Murphy's.
Murphy's, yeah. That's where I started. Actually, I met you. You were at that meet and greet the day before that, right? At that like gazebo that they were building, and trying to remember. It was like a veterans meet and greet where they were building like a gazebo out in the woods, and there were like 40 of us.
Oh yeah, that was so friggin' sketchy. There were like 6 people there, and she walks out in her friggin' blazer and like heels. It was so strange. Yeah, okay, you were there for that. Yeah.
That was where I met her, and I didn't really talk to you. I just remember seeing you there. And then I think we actually like first started talking when we were in Raymond, like a month later, is when I actually
the first time we talked that I remember was when we were in the truck, but that was coming from way up north.
Yeah, that was the first time we actually had any meaningful conversation, I would say.
And I passed out in his truck, and I woke up and started like mumbling, and he got all creeped out. I was like, "What's that?" Because I was like, I passed out. I was like, I think I had a hypnic jerk, and I was like, "Oh shit!" You're like, "What?" It was weird.
Dude.
I don't know how I passed out sitting up like that. I'm like, it was strange. I have sleeping problems. Anyway.
All right, I think this is a good spot to get started with the conversation. So, welcome everybody. This is Frank Analysis. I'm your host, Franco. Joined today by my friends, Dak Rouleau, host of his own channel, Dak Rouleau, Christy Doff, Free Assange activist, and you can also find her on Dak Rouleau's channel. She is also on overwritten.org with Dak Rouleau. I also have Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist Capitalist, and Jeff Melton, host of The Bitter Pill. How are all you guys doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
What is up?
Stupendous.
Great.
I mean, what else can we say? Like, we're alive after all this craziness that's going on. The
We're
election
still
was a big,
here.
that was chaotic. But it wasn't as chaotic as I thought it was going to be. I thought there was going to be a lot more riots, or maybe it's yet to come. What are your thoughts? What did you guys think of the results of the election?
I'm not surprised that we had this anticlimactic, just sort of dribbling out of who the winner is. It's just, we thought there was going to be, people were boarding up their businesses. We thought there was going to be civil war. People were stocking up on groceries again. I mean, they got to because COVID's coming again, but it did seem to just peter out to nothing. And now we may or may not flip it in the Supreme Court. I like we were saying earlier, it's a little hard to keep up on and know who to believe right now.
I think it would have been more violent if Trump had won. And I think anyone who doesn't say that is not being intellectually honest. If he had won, there totally would be a ton of craziness going on right now. I think on election night, when everyone was saying, "Oh my, it looks like he's going to do it again," there were very few of us who were like, just wait. And sure enough, the mail-in ballots switched it over to Biden. I thought Biden was going to win by a larger margin than he did, and I was hoping that whole red mirage thing wasn't going to happen, because I figured it would kind of spark the controversy that's going on right now.
So you, Reed, and Dak knew that there was going to be a red mirage?
I figured there would be, yeah.
My view is... go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, it was talked about for a long time. And Trump, of course, talked about it, that the mail-in ballots were going to be for Biden, and he thought they shouldn't count or whatever. But, everybody knew most... a lot more Democrats than Republicans were voting mail-in. I saw an article about Pennsylvania that somebody did a survey and found like 3 times as many Democrats or Biden people who were voting for Biden as people who were voting for Trump were mailing their ballots in, and of course more Trump supporters were voting on election day. So it was predictable, and it was. Really unfortunate. It created a lot of controversy that, could have been avoided if, they'd been able to count the mail-in ballots sooner. I guess actually the Pennsylvania legislature, Republican-controlled legislature deliberately made it so they couldn't start counting mail-in ballots or early ballots until the day of, in order to drag it out and make it more chaotic.
Yeah, I'd been saying for a while that the Democratic Party was focusing so much on trying to basically extort people who did not vote 4 years ago, trying to guilt trip them and demonize them in the public imagination and say that they are single-handedly responsible for every single evil thing that Donald Trump has ever done, even things he did before he was elected president. And so I figured that brainwashing of the masses, which was accomplished through selective targeting of very particular demographics through television events, advertising during football games and basketball games, that would be enough to convince people to fill in Biden's name on the ballots that were mailed to their houses, sometimes without even asking for them in advance. And happening in the election. During the election night, I was really, really hoping that Donald Trump would be able to pull off an upset. And for a little while, it looked like he was going to do that. But when I woke up on the day of Wednesday the 4th, I realized that Joe Biden was going to win, which made me look smarter than I actually am, but was also worse for my ambitions for the country. So it's a pretty hollow victory. And now we can look forward to at least 4 very dystopian years under the Biden administration.
Do you guys buy the mainstream media hype that, oh, Trump is trying to install a coup, like he's trying to have a coup, and he's not gonna want to get rid of, he's not gonna want to step down? Do you guys think that that's overhyped?
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
no.
I mean, there was an article, I think in the Guardian, that mentioned that like the Wall Street Journal, Fox, and New York Post, like all these Murdoch-owned outlets were really putting the heat on Trump to, step down gracefully and concede. So, I mean, even within the Republican Party, yeah, there's some people what's her name, Lindsey Graham and some others, who are on Trump's side, but a lot of Republicans are like, dude, you lost. So
yeah.
Go ahead, Reed, and then I'll read some of these comments.
I think I sent to the group text the night before the election. I said Biden will win, Trump will have a fake hissy fit, but he'll eventually leave. I don't know if you guys remember me sending that, but I still think that's true. Like, I think that this is a show for his supporters. I think when he ran in 2016, it was as a joke, and he accidentally won. I don't think he really thought he was going to win.
Yeah, he didn't think he was going to win.
No, so I think it's a similar situation, but
it might be just damage control. All this talks that he's like going to keep it going, that he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. But I have seen some evidence that there could be election fraud. I'm not taking a stance of, oh, it definitely happened, but I am taking a stance that it probably happened based off of evidence that I've seen presented on The Last American Vagabond, the way that we've had our voting machines set up, the way that the DNC has cheated before, and it's been documented before. So do you guys think it's fair to say that the objective stance is to say that it probably happened, or that you don't know, but it's possible, but it's not objective to say it definitely did not happen or that it definitely did happen?
This is what I would like to say about that. Was there voter fraud? Was there electoral fraud? Of course there was. There has been voter fraud in every single election in every single country on earth going back to ancient Greece. But voter fraud is very different from rigging an election. Mm-hmm. Now, the Democratic Party does have a documented history of rigging their own primaries. But do they have the ability to rig an election which takes place outside of their own circle? I'm not sure if they have the mechanisms in place to do such a thing. But this is what I want to say, going back to your earlier question about, is Trump attempting to orchestrate a coup? I think that the use of the term coup is over the top, because I think what Trump is going to do, and I retweeted tonight an article from Michigan Live, MLive, which talks about Trump's lawsuit and its attempt to render invalid over 1 million votes that were cast in the election, in the Michigan election. I think that what Trump is trying to do is find some kind of obscure loophole that would enable election officials to declare a ballot invalid. If a piece of the ballot is torn off in one corner, then you could technically say that it's spoiled and you could discount it. So is that, strictly speaking, illegal? Probably not. It's definitely underhanded, but if it is a direct contravention of the law. So I'm reluctant to use the word coup here, but I do think he's trying to find some dishonest method whereby he can stay in power.
So you do believe that there was election fraud and voter fraud, just not that it was significant.
Sure.
And that it wasn't going to, like, even if they do find it and even without it, that Trump still would have lost.
Yes and yes.
Got it. And then Jeff, I saw like on Twitter that it seemed like you were taking the stance that you don't believe that it happened. You want to explain your stance?
Well, I mean, we don't really know, but we do know. Well, there's several things that we do know. We know that Republicans, especially, and sometimes Democrats, but mainly in their primaries, try to deregister certain groups of people. People of color, lower income people, students, or young adults. That's well documented. Greg Palast has done outstanding work on this for the past 20 years, starting with the 2000 presidential election and the massive suppression of black votes in Florida. So we know that happened. So we can probably safely assume that some of that went on this time, and that helped Trump. But certainly it's possible that there was some rigging on the other side. But I don't think that the Democrats care as much about the general election as they do about making sure that somebody like Bernie Sanders doesn't win in the primaries. So, I don't think the motivation is there. And the other thing is, I think that they don't feel like they needed to rig the election to win. They were very confident. The polls were all showing Biden was going to win by a lot more than he actually did, and they never expected to lose to Trump in 2016. They didn't expect to lose to him this year, especially given how absolutely horribly Trump has handled the pandemic and how he responded to the protests, which turned a lot of more liberal types off. So I think they were very confident that they were going to win, especially given that they have pretty good control over the corporate media. So they were able to suppress negative criticism of Biden to a great extent. So I think they felt like they had it in the bag. They didn't need to do anything to the election. We don't know if they did, but I don't think they felt like they needed to.
All right, so I'm testing my mic right now. Do I sound louder now to you guys? In the chat.
Fine.
Let me know if my mic sounds better.
Sounds fine, but
Yeah, do you guys? Yeah. On Skype I sound fine, but I want to make sure that I sound fine to everybody on the.
oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So, Jeff, do you think that Biden was not the more preferred establishment candidate to the intelligence and to Silicon Valley and the military-industrial complex, considering how Trump often spills the beans of what the true intentions are of our country and our corporations? I mean, he said in one speech he was admitting that we were in Syria for oil. And he also is really incompetent when it comes to establishing coups in Venezuela and in Bolivia. So what do you think?
Come on, Mike. Well, I mean, I think, yes, they preferred Biden to Trump. They would make money either way. I don't think they were nearly as afraid of Trump becoming president as they were of somebody like a Bernie Sanders becoming president.
Right.
Even though we all have our criticism of Bernie Sanders and think he would cave under pressure a lot of the time, they were scared of someone like him becoming president. Yeah, I think they have a preference for Biden over Trump. And obviously even right-wing Republicans, some of them anyway, like John Kasich
The
and Rick
Bush
Snyder
administration
and so forth.
alumni.
And boy, was Biden proud of getting Rick Snyder's endorsement. Oh my God.
Yeah, and the Bush administration alumni, all those war criminals, they endorsed Biden.
Yeah, and the architect of the disaster in Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Rick Snyder. So yeah, definitely a ruling class preference for Biden, but I don't think they would have thought it had been the end of the world if Trump won. They just didn't think he would. I mean, the polls had Biden up consistently anywhere from 5 to 10 or more % the whole time. So it was actually a big surprise that he didn't win by more than the 3.5% that he did.
Yeah, well, the polls showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide in 2016.
No, not a landslide.
In 2016, 3%. They said that she had a 99% chance of winning. So maybe the polls were off this time too. I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying like that Trump had this in the bag, but I mean, I think it's still possible that the election could have been stolen from him.
Yeah, it's possible, but I mean, that's what you're talking about. It's not a poll; it's some pundits' estimates of the odds of Clinton winning. That's not a poll. The poll said that on average, that Clinton would win the popular vote by about 3%, whereas she actually won the popular vote by about 2%. The polls wrongly predicted the outcome in some of the battleground states, which is understandable given that they have a margin of error of like 3% or whatever, so they could be wrong if the outcome's close. But the polls were not as far off in 2016 as they were this year.
All right, so I want to get Christy's perspective and then read. Implicate Warlord said Biden's wife is going to be the mediator between the deep states and Biden. I think that Kamala Harris is going to be the mediator. They stacked her campaign. Her campaign staff was filled with former Hillary Clinton campaign staffers. I think that she was the chosen one. Dak, I know that you have a theory that you align with somebody who you interviewed. What was his name again? This person who was running for Senate.
Oh, Daniel Burke.
Yeah, that the primary run for the Democrats was really like to see who's going to be his vice president. I still think that they saw how Biden was declining in his mental health, that they were preparing and gearing up for somebody who is going to take over after Biden. If that is truly what they were trying to do. Regardless, they were prepping for somebody like Kamala or somebody like Pete Buttigieg to take the orders of our intelligence in the military-industrial complex. So I want to hear, Christy, what are your thoughts on this? And then we'll hear from Reed.
I don't think anyone needs to be the mediator between the deep state and Biden. Biden has been in the government now for 48 years. Like, he is entrenched in what I would consider the deep state, the military-industrial complex. I don't think anyone needs to be that mediator. His wife may or may not have deeper connections with her family and what she's done. I don't know. I don't know that much about Jill Biden, actually. But I just think it's really bizarre that we want to look at Joe Biden as some sort of like a fresh voice, and he's going to bring change, and things are going to be great now. And when you see the neo-lib perspective of like, oh, thank God Trump's out of there, everything's great, racism's over, like kids are going to be out of cages, and it's just like, what
there's just going to be less media elected? Coverage of it.
What do you think? Who do you think you put in office? Like, I'm still baffled by the delusion, I guess. I shouldn't be surprised by it, but sometimes I still am.
All right, Reed, what do you think?
Yeah, so I'm convinced that they're going to try to replace Biden in his first term. I don't think they need to. And I think Biden did better than Kamala Harris would have done against Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump might have beat Kamala Harris because people hate Kamala Harris kind of like they hate Hillary. They're very similar people. Where even though I hate everything about Joe Biden, I myself can't really bring myself to hate him so much at this point because he's so gone,
He's a shell of his former self.
Yeah, so it's just kind of, I don't know. It's a different feeling toward him. I don't think they need anyone because he'll just be a puppet. But I don't think that. I think that Kamala Harris will be the de facto Democratic nominee in 2024, and people already talking about trying to primary her are kind of hilarious. I don't think that that's going to happen.
It's not.
I also think that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris aren't as stupid as people think. Some people are saying that domestically they're going to be more conservative than like George W. Bush. I think they're smarter than that. I think they'll throw a couple bones in some areas to try to appease the progressive base. Nothing major, but they'll throw a couple things in there. I think that progressives are doing themselves a disservice by framing Joe Biden as a conservative, because he's not a conservative. He's a neoliberal, which is a very different thing. And so people aren't going to take him seriously when they see him going after certain environmental regulations and raising taxes, things like that, because those are not conservative ideals. So I think they're kind of doing themselves a disservice there. But we'll see. I don't know what he'll actually do while he's in there.
So I sent you guys an article written by Whitney Webb on her website, Unlimited Hangout, talking about how a lot of these machines are owned by multinationals who preferred Biden over Trump and who donated more money to Joe Biden. We've also have a history of like election rigging by voting machines, discrepancies, and like changing the algorithms. This isn't anything new. And I don't really remember because I was really, really little when this happened. But in 2000, wasn't the election stolen by Al Gore, from Al Gore by Bush and his people? I'm gonna start with you, Jeff. I don't know if you probably remember this better since you're older than us. Was that in fact stolen from Al Gore?
Oh, definitely, but they don't actually talk about the main source of the stealing very much. The Florida Republican administration, the supervisor of elections, somebody Harris was her name, masterminded a campaign to disenfranchise black voters by falsely accusing them of being felons. And they got, I think the figure was about 30,000 voters off the rolls who, overwhelmingly they would have voted for Gore if they had voted. And Bush only won the state by 537 votes, I believe it was. One less than the number of electoral votes, coincidentally, which is why Joy Reid was confused about where the name of the website 538 came from. But anyway, getting back to that. And then, there were a number of things. There were some weird ballots in Palm Beach County where you couldn't tell what candidate was lined up with what bubble, or it was hard to tell. And so a lot of Jews voted for the anti-Semitic Patrick Buchanan. It's pretty hilarious and cost Al Gore a few thousand votes.
That is the kind of thing that I was referring to when I talked about Trump exploiting quote-unquote legal means in order to overturn ballots and other states. But for a little bit of information about George W. Bush and the election of 2000, a good source is actually none other than Fahrenheit 9/11. I know that Michael Moore sucks these days, but there was a time where he actually had a bit of a spine. And he points out at the beginning of the film that Fox News was the only major channel that called the state of Florida for Bush election night 20 years ago. And he explains that, quote, the man in charge of the decision desk at Fox News that night who called it for Bush was none other than Bush's first cousin, John Ellis. And of course, Bush's brother was governor of the state of Florida, and his campaign chairwoman was also in charge of counting the votes in Florida. And Michael Moore accused her of hiring a company to knock voters off the rolls who were unlikely to vote for Bush, those voters being, of course, black. So these were some considerations. But I just wanted to touch on the previous topic just for a second. Joe Biden has been in office for 48 years. If his political career was a human female, she would be in the midst of menopause. That's how long Joe Biden has been in office. Now, as for Kamala Harris, we're talking about, is she intelligent? Is Joe Biden intelligent? I think that Joe Biden used to have some intelligence. I think that Kamala Harris really is as stupid as she appears to be. If you've listened to her long-form interviews with CNN, it is very clear that she is just way in over her head. She talks about books she hasn't read. She pretends to have read those books. She routinely stumbles over her words. Her performance during the debates was embarrassing. So no, I don't think Kamala Harris has any intellectual ability at all. And just one last thing I wanted to say, I did like my interview with Daniel Burke. He did not come up with the idea that Kamala Harris was chosen, that the primary process was just about screening potential vice presidential candidates for Biden. That was my idea. Daniel Burke talked about the idea that voting for Joe Biden is legitimizing the coup against Donald Trump.
Yeah, and if you think about it, I mean, not only did the Bush administration endorse Joe Biden, which is significant because Bush and his people, from what it appears from all these allegations that he did cheat Al Gore out of the elections, but we also have the Obama people, we have the Clinton people, and voting machines such as Dominion. That is owned by somebody named, or somebody who sits on the board of it is William Connard, who served in Obama's administration as the ambassador of the EU. He also worked in the Clinton administration. So there is some profitable interest in some of these people who sit on executive boards for these voting machines to rig the election somehow in their favor. This is one of the possibility of that happening is one of the reasons for why Tulsi Gabbard came up with her Securing America's Election Act.
I would say that those people were probably there to invoke the nuclear option if necessary. Their presence doesn't mean that it was rigged. It means that if their massive propaganda campaign failed, they could be there to pull the lever and if need be. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm saying that it's possible. Like our system is set up, it's very ripe for election fraud to really change the outcomes of an election. That's why I'm not concluding definitively that Joe Biden stole the election from Donald Trump. I'm just saying that it's possible. And I think it's really fair to speculate that it is possible.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely fair to speculate. I think we should be skeptical of our democratic process.
Yeah.
I think if it was stolen, they did a really bad job because it wouldn't seem like they'd want it this close. Maybe they wouldn't want it to be a blowout. Maybe that's too obvious. But, I mean, it's a little close for comfort if they rigged it. So that's kind of what makes me skeptical. Also, I'm not sure if anyone knows anything about this, but have they traced it back to the other races? I mean, because if they were rigging it for Donald Trump, they certainly didn't rig it for the Democrats in general. They screwed that up royally, like Congress, the representative went to the Republicans a little bit more in the
Yeah.
Senate.
Yeah,
It's
Reed,
looking
I'm glad you brought that up. I've seen people bring that up, and I think Charles also addressed this on Twitter. Our government really wants a right wing government. I mean, our corporate overlords, they really want a right wing government. So the Democrats also want to have an excuse for why they won't pass any progressive policies. So if they blame it on the right wing Senate, some people are gonna buy it.
I think this actually proves how propaganda was working, that they reached out to people who don't follow politics very closely and basically told them, here, just fill in this bubble for Biden. It proves that the people they reached with their propaganda weren't very serious, because they didn't bother to vote in any of the down ballot races. They just said, yeah, I want the Trump monster out of politics. And then they fell asleep after they filled in that one bubble for Biden. It shows, when people try to say that this shows how engaged the American people are, I mean, 65% of the country voted for one candidate. It's not very encouraging.
Yeah, the voter outreach was on steroids this election year, I feel.
Yeah, Dak, you said, I think you tweeted out something along the lines of, if WikiLeaks later on exposes that this election was rigged, you wouldn't be surprised. But you think the public is still plugged into the matrix and that they're doing a great deed by voting for Joe Biden. I agree with that. I mean, I think people are really, really dumb. And I think they also, it's not just because they're lied to. I think if all the facts were laid out before them, they would still choose to be dumb. Another unfortunate thing that we saw in this election is that ranked choice voting doesn't really make much of a difference, because they used it in like 4 states, I think, or 3 states.
I told you that thing was a scam. I knew that was a terrible system. I do want to let Christy get in here, but I just want to say that, yes, the Democrats spent fortunes untold on these voter registration campaigns for a reason. We'll never know how much money they actually spent on it, but it was millions upon possibly even hundreds of millions of dollars. They didn't spend that money for no reason. They knew that they could guilt trip the country into voting for their guy.
Yeah, go ahead, Christy. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think COVID really played into the hands of the Democrats. I think that's partially not just, circumstance. I think Trump really fell flat on his face during COVID. I think he could have stood up to Fauci. I think he could have stood up for the economy and the country, and he didn't. He sort of waffled in between the two. Some people thought if he was elected for a second term, then he would really start to say what he felt. But if you watch Donald Trump at all, he always said what he felt. So I always thought that was a little strange that he wasn't in this particular case. So yeah, I mean, it's every election we go through this, but there was a particular energy of this is a life or death election. We have to hold our nose and vote for Joe Biden, because Donald Trump's a fascist, Donald Trump's a racist, Donald Trump is costing lives, and in particular, the COVID death number was getting played into that propaganda as well.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't for COVID, Donald Trump could have won by a lot.
Yeah, agreed.
I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I heard an echo too. Do you guys still hear it?
I think it's gone now.
It went away. All right. So, where is this comment? I really want to read. Somebody brought up ranked choice voting. All right, Lisa Savage, who is in a state that has ranked choice voting, she only got 5% as Green Party Senate candidate in Maine. They have ranked choice voting. Shout out to Cannabis Sativa for bringing that up. Dak, you explained before how you think that ranked choice voting is a scam. Could you explain why that is, and what do you propose would be a better solution?
A better solution would be armed insurrection. Armed insurrection. It's my solution for most things. This is the problem with ranked choice voting. The ranked choice voting is basically just as idiotic as packing the Supreme Court. And this is the problem with it. With ranked choice voting, what you say, let's just make it very simple. You have your choice between Trump, Biden, and Joe Jorgensen, okay? All right. So you pick Joe Jorgensen, but if she's not your first choice, then your second vote will go to Joe Biden. What this does is this allows Joe Biden to receive votes that he should not receive. Because when you say that you're going to pick Joe Jorgensen, but if she doesn't get first place, then your vote will go to Biden. And this basically allows Biden or the other establishment major party candidates to harvest votes that they did not receive. And so what it does is it completely delegitimizes the third party candidates because they have no actual clout. The people who are voting for them are voting for them only temporarily, but their vote their vote for the third party candidates won't count. It will count when it goes to Biden or Trump. This is how it works, is it squanders your vote, as I'm hearing myself echoing again. And God almighty, why do we keep having this echo on here? It drives me up a wall.
All right, let's mute each other's mics. Let's try to figure out who has the echo. All right, so everybody mute their mic, and then I'll do a mic check, and then we'll go one by one. You guys all muted your mics? All right. I'm not hearing an echo from when I'm talking, so we'll start with Dak. Go ahead. Say something.
Echo, 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 echo.
All right, it's not Dak. Reed.
Hello, hello, hello.
No echo. Jeff.
Oh, who is that?
Hello, hello, hello.
All right, now Christy.
Oh my.
Oh no, is it me? Am I the echo?
No, I think it resets once like somebody mutes their mic. All right, so how about we do this? Whenever somebody talks, everybody else mutes their mic except for the person speaking.
Just like in the presidential debate.
All right, does anybody have any objections to Dak's idea on ranked choice voting?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, what's her name? Lisa Savage got 5%, which is more than just about any Green Party candidate for Senate has gotten. I mean, most people don't really know about the Green Party. Howie Hawkins, I think, did a lot better in Maine than he did elsewhere, because it was ranked choice voting. So, I mean, it's one of many factors that enables people to not be blackmailed by the Democrats into, voting for them rather than the candidate they really prefer. I mean, that's one of the reasons why third parties have had such a difficult time breaking through, is because people are scared out of their wits. Oh my God, the Republican boogeyman, Trump or Bush, whoever is going to win if I don't vote for the Democrat. So they're scared. But if you look at the polls, people do support there being a third party. They're just afraid, and this is one way of reducing that fear.
I think it might be something that's going to take time because people are still stuck in this two-party mentality where they still think that third parties are so unviable that they're going to have to make them their third or fourth choice. But maybe after some time, they can be more viable if we do have a ranked choice voting. What do you guys think?
I think that, so if I had ranked choice voting in Utah, I would have chosen Joe Jorgensen as 1, Kanye West as 2, and then I would have written in Ron Paul as number 3. I would not have filled in Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And I think that most people voting third party as their, who would vote third party as their first choice anyway, I think most of them probably wouldn't fill out Joe Biden or Donald Trump. The only people who will fill out Joe Biden or Donald Trump are the people who ended up voting for either of them in this election because they were scared then they would have chosen someone else and then put Joe Biden or Donald Trump as their number 2. So I don't think it actually steals from anyone, because I think the people who vote for either of those candidates, I think the people who didn't vote for either of those candidates probably wouldn't fill them in as number 2 or 3, and that the only people who would be voting differently are the ones who voted out of fear for either of those two.
Yeah, and we also have to think about how they might be thinking, okay, it's just like this here, but whatever I put might affect the results, like in all these other states and then in the country as a whole. I think exposure is also still a problem, where people just aren't familiar with the third-party candidates, but they are very familiar with the other 2 main candidates. So I don't know. It's gonna have to be. We can't have a sudden solution to this. I think it's going to take a lot of time.
What the question of what would voters do is irrelevant to the question of what is the function of ranked choice voting. And the function of ranked choice voting is eventually to get that third party directed or redirected to a major party candidate. That's what it's all about. Is it says to you, it gives you a second, third, fourth, or even fifth shot at the ballot, which is pretty bizarre because in a way you're voting 5 times. But what it says is that if your third party candidate doesn't work out on the first ballot, then you can pick somebody else. And so what that does is it takes away all of the bargaining power from those third parties, because it gives people the option to eventually redirect their vote towards the major parties. So focusing on the statistics of what people did in isolated incidents is really not the point. The point is that there is a reason why the establishment is becoming very amenable to the idea of ranked choice voting. It's because it completely pulls the rug out from under the third party candidates. If you see third party candidates endorsing this, then they're endorsing their own political suicide.
No,
I think that's the
entirely.
point. But,
Jeff seems to disagree. What do you think, Jeff?
I see no evidence whatsoever that the establishment supports ranked choice voting. The Democrats seem to be very much against it for the most part. The only exceptions are people like Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard. In general, mainstream Democrats are against it because they want to be able to blackmail people into not voting for third parties and making sure that third parties don't get a foothold. And one thing I just recalled about Lisa Savage's race is that the Democrats went out of their way, and maybe the Republicans too, I don't know, went out of their way to make sure that people didn't know she was running. She was shut out of one of the last debate, and the Democratic candidate's campaign staff went around in their canvassing telling people that she had dropped out of the race, that Lisa Savage had dropped out of the race. Ranked choice voting is not a panacea, obviously, but that's because a lot of people still don't know about the Green Party or the Libertarians or whatever.
Would this also solve the problem, like ranked choice voting? Would it also solve the problem? Because Brian Fauch brought up a point about how it is good for local elections. In DC, we had races with multiple candidates and multiple won races with only 30% of votes. 30% is not the majority of the population in DC. So could ranked choice voting solve this problem of candidates winning by only like 30%, but they just got more votes than the other candidates?
I think that we should probably all look into what the outcomes have been with ranked choice voting a lot more before we draw any firm conclusions about it.
I just explained that the way that it worked in this particular election or this particular election is separate from the function. What it accomplishes in theory is what I'm concerned about, not about how Lisa Savage did in her particular election and Howie Hall Hawkins.
Oh,
Fighting Howard
gosh.
Hawkins that's not. Yeah, there were so many problems with the Green Party this year and with third-party candidates in general that this election would be more of an outlier for third-party candidates than anything else. Ralph
Yeah.
Nader even
Yeah,
said.
well, that's my point, Dak. That's my point. We can't base conclusions about ranked choice voting.
Right, but you're not listening to me. What I'm saying is that there's the function of it is separate from from this particular election. I'm skeptical of it for those reasons.
Okay.
All right,
Well, I
we'll
think-
get Christy and Reed's voice, and then we'll move on to another topic.
Well, I mean, as far as ranked choice voting, it's not something I know a lot about or have thought a lot about. But I think still with third-party candidates, the minimal exposure that they get on the public stage, I don't know if ranked choice voting would really help them. I think really people, whether they're included in the debates, I mean, that could be a game changer too. But I just feel like people aren't really aware of how many third parties there are.
There's a lot.
Right. And I think, when people talk about 2016 and they heard, oh, you're a third party voter, they just assume you voted for Jill Stein. They didn't even realize there was a libertarian candidate. So I think there is a lot, it's a much bigger hill than just the ranked choice voting to really help third parties. I think there's a lot more exposure and education that needs to be brought out to the almost, I mean, the mainstream, essentially, because the media is not going to help the third parties and they're not getting included in debates. So how do they get out to the people more?
Mm-hmm. Does anybody agree with propaganda here? He said, I personally support having a revolution and forcing in plebiscite, have the people vote without politicians or parties, one system in place to bring forth new bills.
This is, I think he's referring to the system, or at least something similar to the system that Mike Gravel has advocated for, where there's just a people's legislature and there's no representative government. Sure, yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, me and Reed discussed a little bit about Mike Gravel's book. Dak, I know you talked about this with Mike Gravel himself. Do you think that this could be something that can unite people that believe in socialism ideology and libertarian ideology?
Well, I would advocate in the first place to just abolish political parties in general, because I think what political parties do is they create this false sense of distinction among candidates. I mean, if you didn't have political parties and you forced politicians to run on the issues, then you would see a shift in the public perception. But in the people's legislature, there wouldn't really be many politicians because everyone would be able to introduce legislation as long as they adhere to the certain requirements laid in Gravel's plan. But yes, I do think that if we eliminate this idea of party affiliation and we allow the ideas to stand on their own merit, then we would see that people would come around to them. I think when you get rid of the idea of party loyalty, then people are going to be more open-minded. I mean, we're already seeing right now, you linked us earlier to an article, which I assume we're going to talk about soon, which is that how Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are being shut out of Biden's administration or cabinet, supposedly because the Democrats are worried about losing seats in the next election. Well, imagine if we didn't have to worry about losing seats, and if we just allowed the ideas to stand on their own, then we would find that a lot of these other considerations are perfectly frivolous.
All right, Reed, you want to have the last word here before I bring up that article that Dak just mentioned?
Yeah, sure. I think the most direct form of democracy is no government. But I like the idea of direct democracy if it's localized. I think it's a horrible idea on a federal level. But if it's localized, I think it's great. I think the larger pool you create of direct democracy, the more exploitation of the minority you have if you keep it localized and separated and leave it up to communities, and there's less exploitation. So it's something I can get behind. And
And I would just want to add to that one of the core principles of the Green Party is grassroots democracy. So, as a Green Party advocate, I would say yes, absolutely. That's the form of government we should aim for, is much more direct democracy rather than representative democracy. However, the question is not really, is that a good idea? I think a lot of us could agree that it is, but how do we get there? That's a long way off.
All right, so I'm starting to lose more and more hope. Well, actually, I don't have any hope at all with this article that we're going to talk about now about ever reforming the Democratic Party. Did you guys see who Biden is thinking about having on his cabinet? It's like one war criminal after another intelligence associated figure, after a Silicon Valley associated figure. Meanwhile, this article that was published on The Independent told us that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren are going to be frozen out of any position in Biden's cabinet. I mean, what this idea that people had that we were going to push Biden to the left more easily than Trump, I don't think is true.
I think that idea was very delusional. I don't know who seriously thought that Warren and Bernie, especially Bernie, I could maybe see Warren, but I don't know who honestly, at the end of the day, could admit to themselves that Bernie Sanders was going to get a position and that it was going to be so easy to move Biden left. Like, that idea to me, I just could never wrap my mind around it, that they would think after 48 years, we're going to move Biden left.
It's not.
Yeah, and it sounds like Bernie actually believes that he has a chance of being appointed labor secretary. Talk about delusional.
He's kidding
Does
himself.
he really think that?
He's lying to himself every single night before he goes to sleep that he's doing something good. He's thinking that he is actually going to have a position on Biden's cabinet, and he's not. He's not going to be. He's going to be looked at as a loser in history. And it's unfortunate for me to say that because I really loved Bernie Sanders in 2016, but that's what it looks like it's going to be. He was not the revolutionary that we thought he was going to be. I wasn't expecting anything really from Elizabeth Warren considering her past. But Dak, what do you think?
Dak's gone.
Dak's
I
gone.
didn't even notice. So, Reed, do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, so on the other side of the aisle, Austin Peterson is organizing a, reinvent the Republican Party. He's starting the Tea Party 2.0, and he's trying to get libertarians interested in it. And I have the same thoughts about the Republican Party. I mean, if you think that either of these parties can be reformed, you're kidding yourself. I mean, it's just such a joke. You see what happens to people like Ron Paul or Bernie Sanders. They don't have a chance. So, working in the Libertarian Party has been discouraging because it's so unorganized and it's such a joke. And I'm sure Jeff has had similar experiences with the Green Party, but at least I feel like I'm working for something that isn't corrupt and has a chance to be something good and maybe someday in my lifetime viable. That's a more worthwhile investment than kidding myself into thinking that I can change the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. So that's how I feel.
The Republican Party or the Republican Party, because the Democrats are not really another party. Like the real establishment is what we saw endorse Joe Biden, Bush, the Clintons, Obama, and all the other people that are supporting Trump are just like Pompeo and Rudy Giuliani, who just are thankful that Trump appointed them to a position.
Right.
Is Dak back?
Dak is back. Ooh, that's a good song name or something.
That's the name of the sequel to my biography.
Isn't that an Elton John song? The Dak is back.
Dak, I know you were excited to talk about this article. What are your thoughts, man?
Well, the masochism of the Democratic Party is not as erotic as it could possibly be. Kind of reminds me of Red Letter Media's review of The Phantom Menace. Nothing will ever be more wildly anticipated or a bigger disappointment. No, this is, look, seeing Bernie and Warren getting cucked out of the Biden administration, they really aren't waiting any time to kick their supporters in the nads, are they? We saw on Saturday morning, within a few hours of Biden, or actually technically it was before Biden was declared the president-elect, we saw that awful Congresswoman Abigail Sandberger from Virginia, who I might add is a former employee of the CIA. She went on a radio show and complained about how the Democrats lost good colleagues because of the socialist rhetoric during the primaries. Even in victory, these people are completely ungracious, and they can't help but blame Bernie Sanders and AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar for somehow costing the Democratic Party good people, which is a lie on its face because there are no good people in the Democratic Party. So when we find out that these people who are actually generating some legitimate enthusiasm within the party ranks are going to be shut out of the presidential cabinet, what do people expect? This is precisely why I argue that if you're a progressive, the best thing you could have done would have been to vote for Trump, because the Biden administration will be working overtime to delegitimize progressivism as a political ideology.
And they're already blaming progressives for only narrowly beating Donald Trump. I don't know if you guys saw any of those, any of those mainstream media interviews that they had with some of these politicians, like these corporate Democrat politicians, and also John Kasich going on saying that there's no way that Joe Biden is going to be pushed to the left, and that they're going to honor what conservatives want, which is really what he's saying is that they're going to honor what the corporations want. And it's sad to see how AOC, that rhymed, AOC on Twitter was praising this one guy who, I forgot who it was. I don't know if you guys saw that. This lobbyist for asbestos. Did you guys see that?
Oh, it's Biden's chief of staff,
right.
I believe.
She was congratulating
Ron
him.
Snyder or something. I can't wait till AOC is not a thing anymore. I just can't wait for that.
You know what, AOC, every time, this is going to make me sound really weird, but I have to, it's been on my mind for the last 2.5 years, and I need to get it off my chest right now. When people talk about AOC being dystopian, all right, when I was in high school, I spent a lot of time on this movie forum, and we commonly abbreviated A Clockwork Orange as ACO. So now we have AOC. If someone out there could please redo the poster for A Clockwork Orange so it's AOC coming out of the A instead of Malcolm McDowell, I will die happy.
I mean, AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, they played major roles in helping Biden win in certain states, right?
Yeah, they're going to impeach the motherfucker, right?
Right, and so how many years of the Biden administration is it going to take before people stop believing in the squad? Like, when will they make that connection that the squad didn't really do what they wanted them, what they thought, and propped them up on this silver platter of, they're the end-all, be-all answer to Americans' problem of electing colored women.
You know what I think of?
They didn't deliver.
Oh, sorry.
I think of, in terms of what they get out of all this, and the people who are propping them up. I think of Willy Wonka from the 1970s movie, just coming up to them saying, "You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir." Like, they're not getting anything out of this.
I think more of the Monkey song. What's the use of trying? All you get is pain. When I wanted sunshine, I got rain. No, okay. No, when you say the Biden administration, it just sounds like rotten meat you found at the back of the refrigerator.
Biden.
It's not going to last very long before the Harris administration becomes a thing. Whoa! The Harris administration. Shudder the thought.
So
Yeah,
I wanna talk about this tweet that Unapologetic on YouTube retweeted. He retweeted Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders said, "With the coronavirus pandemic surging, it's refreshing to see new leadership coming into power who actually believe in science. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris understand that our first order of business must be to defeat this deadly virus. Let's get it done." And then Unapologetic responded to that, and he said, "The we're going to war with the with neoliberalism and Biden the day after the election rhetoric was a lie to make you feel better about voting for a chief architect of neoliberalism. These people are partisan hacks who play for Team Democrat. If you voted for Biden, you got played."
Yep.
I mean, think back to the history. I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but Bernie Sanders, he made a deal with the Democrats in Vermont so that they can leave him alone, so that he can run as an independent, so that he doesn't split the vote with the Democrats, because that's what happened in the previous election. And so that's what they did. The Democrats stepped aside and they let Bernie Sanders win as an independent on the condition that he was going to vote for a lot of the things that the Democrats want. And so he voted for the bombing of Kosovo, and also the bombing of
sanctions
Iraq.
against Iraq and the resolution to overthrow Saddam Hussein.
I mean, on foreign policy, Bernie Sanders is very, very overrated. Bernie Sanders, he's played along with a lot of the imperialism that the Democrats want.
So why did people get mad at me when I asked him about Julian Assange? Oh, I was making him look bad. I was foiling his game of 5-dimensional chess. How stupid that criticism sounds now. Today, I can take my victory lap. I mean, the guy made himself look stupid for years.
The somersaults that the Bernie fans did over the Julian Assange question was...
Oh.
Yeah, and so many of them had the knives out for Tulsi. It was unbelievable.
Tulsi, who's the only one right now standing up for Julian Assange.
Yep.
As aside from some of the Republicans that have signed on to her resolutions to protect whistleblowers.
You know, they wanted us to see Bernie as Moses, but he was really just Job. You're right.
So, do you guys, Dak and Christy, I know you guys are Assange activists. Do you think it's unforgivable what Bernie Sanders and AOC and some of the other squad people are doing in terms of ignoring Tulsi's resolutions? And some of them have been going after her for the whole, what is it called? Project Veritas situation that occurred.
It's absolutely a litmus test to these politicians. The Julian Assange question is a litmus test. And when you have people like Bernie Sanders, AOC, the squad ignoring it and, touting around that they believe in freedoms, they believe that, Trump is putting a war against journalists and press freedom, they're a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, I don't think it's even a debatable thing.
Yeah, and I think it's also unforgivable the independent channels on YouTube that found it to be a better priority to go after and attack Tulsi Gabbard instead of talking about her resolution.
Well, and many of those independent channels, if you look back, did speak about Julian Assange at one time, but then they saw how it was not advantageous to their popularity. It was not advantageous to their followers, to their numbers, to the algorithm. And so they quickly dropped Julian Assange like yesterday's trash. There is no dignity. There is no core belief in these independent media figures if they do not stand for Assange. They are not independent. They are not media that will last long term if they ultimately do not stand for one in their own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Emma Vigeland from TYT used to be a huge Tulsi Gabbard fan, and now she's flustered. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, yeah. Now they're going after Jimmy Dore. Jimmy and they always have to want to bring up Tulsi whenever they get.
Who's
they try to
going
get the
after
chance.
Jimmy Dore?
Emma Vigilant, who is now on Sam Cedar's show on the Majority Report, and she had, of course, she brought up Tulsi Gabbard. Whenever she gets the opportunity to, she tries to bring up Tulsi Gabbard. She even brought him up when she was talking about the death of Michael Brooks. She was like, "Yeah, I remember Michael Brooks, who he helped me like go after all these Tulsi stands."
Yeah, well, Michael Brooks sucks, so get over it.
So I think I think it is interesting that Tulsi has brought this resolution, but I think we're setting the bar pretty damn low with Tulsi. Tulsi did not speak up for Assange very often and not very much on her own accord once the trial started back in February. And so I think it's great that she brought this resolution, but it's really sort of the minimal work. Like and that's just disappointing in our politicians and the people in our government that we have to put this much focus on Tulsi being the only whistleblower supporting politician, and she really actually hasn't done that much.
I wanted to say one thing that even though she's kind of irrelevant, Joe Jorgensen and I think every libertarian who ran for the nomination was talking about Julian Assange all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was really annoying on Twitter how people would talk about how Tulsi was the only person who ran for president who ever talked about Julian Assange.
Right.
And I realize the Libertarian Party is a third party, but every single candidate was talking about it all the time. And I think Howie Hawkins kind of dropped the ball on this. And I don't know. It just pissed me off. I kept saying, no, that's not true. But I just had to throw that in there. So.
Yeah. Dak interviewed Vermin Supreme about it.
Yeah.
Well, Howie Hawkins was talking out of both sides of his mouth on Assange. There were times where he supported him. There were times where he condemned him. Then at the end, he tried to hop on the Assange bandwagon once again. Yeah, the Tulsi fans, look, I produced that video a while ago where I tried to say that we shouldn't, that there was an argument to be made for Biden, but people forgot that I said I was apologizing to some of her fans because quite a few of them need to overcome their own infatuation with the woman and the way that they think she can do no wrong just because she smiled and posed for pictures with them. I mean, their hero worship of her is really unbecoming. Like, she's not running for office anymore. It's time to recognize that she is now politically irrelevant. And I just, anyway, I didn't really even like the way that some politicians would be so opportunistic about Julian Assange. It seems that like talking about Julian Assange is a way to try to give yourself street cred in a sense within the underground. Not just for politicians, but also a lot of media commentators, because I know quite a few people in the independent media who support Assange, but they're also scumbags. So supporting Assange, I mean, we try to see that as the barometer, but that really should just be like 101. I mean, like Christy said, we're setting a pretty low bar for people if we say that because you support Assange, that somehow means that you are one of the good guys.
Right.
Jack Sith asked if you would cancel him, Dak.
If I were to cancel whom?
Jack Sith.
Why should I cancel Jack Sith?
I don't know. He asked if you're gonna cancel him.
Well, I don't think I have a reason to. I mean,
I think some of the Tulsi fans in the audience are a little upset that we are.
I think he's just kidding around.
The things we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, why are we still talking about this person? I mean, I know that's hypocritical of me because I'm going to write a book about her campaign that's going to make me millions of dollars and, make me really cool. But it's just that the way that people, like, you can't go on Twitter and say, God, I really don't like Congress without having one of her fans reply and say, Tulsi's a really good congressperson. And it's like, I've never heard of her before. Please tell me more. I mean, there is an infatuation with her. It really is like a bit of that is unbecoming. There are some accounts out there that are just dedicated to creating the Tulsi Gabbard calendar. And that's not an exaggeration. It's just all Tulsi all the time. Tulsi Palooza is closed for COVID, folks.
Yeah. And the other thing with Tulsi supporters is a lot of them, I think, are they're first time advocates for anything political, and they don't know about anything else. So I was a Rand Paul supporter in 2016. He's been a disappointment in a lot of ways. That's beside the fact. But he was talking about Syria a lot in his 2016 campaign, how we shouldn't have gone into Syria, how we shouldn't arm the rebels. And all these Tulsi supporters were like, oh my God, Tulsi's the only one who knew that we shouldn't go into Syria. She's the only one who did. And it's just like, there are other people other than Tulsi.
Yeah, like Cynthia McKinney. There were a lot of other anti-war people that would serve in Congress and also the Senate. There's also Barbara Lee.
I have just one quick sentence I just want to say. If you did not follow the Ron Paul campaign in 2012, then I could not take your opinion on the Tulsi Gabbard campaign seriously. That's all I want to say.
What if they were like 5 years? No, not 5 years old. But what if they were like 10 years old when that happened?
Well, then they didn't know what to expect. So with all due respect, it doesn't mean they're stupid. It just means that I couldn't take their opinion seriously, because I knew from the very beginning that Tulsi was not going to win. There was never a moment in my mind where I thought Tulsi had a chance in hell of winning the New Hampshire primary, never mind the general election. I followed her campaign because I thought it was good to get the word out about Assange, but having followed what happened to Ron Paul, I knew from day one that there was no way she was going to be allowed to win.
I followed Ron Paul in 2008 and 2012, so that when Bernie was screwed over in DNC, and I predicted it would happen, and then there was proof that it happened. It was not all surprising. And then, of course, come to Tulsi and Bernie getting screwed yet again. So it's not bad if you were 10 years old when that happened and you were not aware or politically active. But there is a lot of fresh meat in the Tulsi campaign. There are a lot of first timers and
a lot of virgins.
It's great. You have now experienced the epic disappointment that is our country's election process. And now you know moving forward. And now you know. And hopefully, I think with the Ron Paul stuff, though, it's like we didn't quite idolize him into this celebrity figure the way that Tulsi's been idolized.
Hot.
I mean, I guess he wasn't sexy enough. I talked to him personally. He was very funny. But, I mean, I don't know. So there's something different about Tulsi that has been turned into this, like, worship campaign.
Yeah, I don't know any Ron Paul supporter who supported him because they thought he was a good person, and the number of times I heard that about Tulsi was ridiculous. Like, oh, I support her for her character or for her personality. It's like, okay, that's kind of weird. But
hey,
whatever.
Reed, I want to ask you this. Matthew Brust said that McKinney has become a batshit crazy libertarian. What do you think about that?
Nice.
Cynthia McKinney?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's become a batshit crazy libertarian.
Yeah.
Good.
Really know much about that, to be honest.
I don't know.
I don't know about
I say be a
rat.
Be a radical in whatever you do. Either be an anarchist or be a tyrant. That's what I say to
There's
people.
There's a lot that libertarians and socialists have in common. For the most part, it is that we are anti-establishment and we want a better governmental system that is more representative of the people.
And substance abuse, but other than that,
substance abuse.
Yeah, that. That's where it begins.
So where do we go from here? It looks like we are gonna get Joe Biden as president. I highly doubt that Donald Trump is gonna get it back, although I don't rule out that it could be possible. But where do you think we go from here? Like, is there going to be a movement for a bigger third party Are people going to wake up and see the disgustingness with the Democratic Party? Or is there going to be a big outsider movement that is going to create a revolution? What do you guys think?
If Biden stays in, they're all going to go back to sleep. There's not going to be a movement as far as the left side of things. They're just going to go back to sleep. The media is going to sing them a lullaby, and they're just going to kind of forget about those bad things that Trump did and how Biden is still continuing them on.
There definitely won't be a primary in 2024. One of you guys said that earlier. It's a joke to like be like saying, "Oh, AOC 2024," or like even Nina Turner 2024 if she runs for the Democrats. Like, it's
even if
over.
Somebody tries, the DNC is not going to allow it.
Exactly. They're gonna try it, but the DNC is gonna do everything in their power. They're even more powerful now, that to try to stop that.
Now that they got all those Bernie Sanders campaign donations, they're even more impressive.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, I think that's.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that obviously the propaganda campaign this year, scaring people about Donald Trump, always a fascist, always going to have a coup, and we're going to have a dictatorship if we don't vote him out. It was highly successful. It sucked people in. So, I didn't really have any doubt that Biden was going to win simply because so many people were so repulsed by Donald Trump, not only because, he really did do things that were repulsive, but because there was this huge propaganda campaign to make him seem worse than he was. And conversely, it was obvious that third parties weren't going to do anywhere near as well as they did in 2016. At the same time, if you look at the objective conditions that we're in, I mean, objectively, things have gotten a lot worse than they were in 2016 in a lot of ways. And, I think there are a lot of people who can't afford to go back to sleep. Some people will, but, I think there's some hope that, the movement for People's Party is going to get somewhere, and perhaps more importantly, we're going to see more of a social movement against the neoliberalism we are up against. So,
Reed, I want to correct the record on what Matthew Brust said. He said that McKinney is not the good kind of libertarian. So there's a good kind of libertarian and the bad kind of libertarian. Is that true?
Oh, well, I hope he thinks I'm the good type of libertarian.
Yeah, I mean, libertarians do have some infighting with themselves on who's enough libertarian and who's not enough as far as where they stand on issues.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Must have missed those meetings.
Yeah, if you are a libertarian who wasn't infuriated by a Trump presidency, then I don't really know what you stand for. I had a tweet that was pinned on my profile for a while that said something like, if libertarianism is only a philosophy that matters under a Democratic president, then it's a joke. Like, you're seeing, people like Rand Paul and Thomas Massie, who aren't technically libertarians, they're Republicans, but they're throwing in with Trump, who signed the CARES Act into law, who doubled the military budget, who dropped more bombs than Obama, who's increased government spending by more than anybody else in history. If you call yourself a libertarian and you stand behind Trump, then you're kind of a joke. And I would say the same for progressives who will stand behind Biden. We're talking about how this anti-Trump movement is going to disappear now. That anti-Trump movement was mostly ridiculous. It was like a woke soccer mom culture that, is just, it was stupid. I mean, there was no substance at all. And if they disappear, it doesn't matter. So people who are, if we're afraid the resistance is going to go to sleep under Biden, then it's a resistance that was worth losing because they don't stand for anything. And I would say the same for right-wingers or libertarians who were asleep under Trump. You don't stand for anything.
Well, that's sort of that's the exact point of this resistance and the white woman who's offended for everybody on behalf of everybody, and the soccer moms and the white liberal women who are now like, wait, Biden wants lockdowns and mask mandates. I didn't know that. Oops. You know, it's amazing being the age I am and immersed in the parenthood and sort of the white suburban moms that are so vocal and so angry on social media and yet don't really know what they're talking about, but they think they're resisting. They think they think that world peace has now been entrenched upon the United States and everything is going to be fine. And so, yeah, that resistance that existed under Trump wasn't a real thing. It wasn't a real resistance. And it's going to go to brunch and wear its mask and get patted on the head and do what they're told. So.
Yeah, so it's nothing we should lament losing, is what I'm saying. I mean,
I agree.
To me, a Biden victory has actually been better than a Trump victory. Not because he's better than Trump, not, he's worse. But it's going to put people who actually care about the atrocities that are taking place back into action, where a lot of those people have been kind of in a stalemate under Trump, because Trump is weird. He's like throwing salt in the wound. He's not bandaging the wound. He's not doing anything to fix anything, but he's just an annoyance that keeps people aware. And to a lot of people, I think they think that's a positive, but the problem is nothing is getting fixed, so it doesn't really matter. And some people are taking the salt in the wound as though it is a bandage, and they're saying, no, he's fighting for us. He's draining the swamp. He's taking the river. And it's like, what are you talking about? He's not doing any of those things. So it's actually brought people who could be in the resistance out of it because they've been duped into thinking that he's one of us when he's not, where Biden is indisputably the enemy. And I think we'll have more people rallying under the same cause of being against Biden than we did against Trump. But as I said before, the resistance against Trump is so meaningless.
I think it's up to us, the people who who are more politically aware, to point out to every liberal that anytime Biden does some imperialist act or some corporatist or right-wing act, to point it out to them and throw it at their faces. Look, Biden just bombed this country. Biden wants to go to this country. Just point it out nonstop. Point out all the horrible shit that he does, so that hopefully that can wake them up.
You know what we need to do? We need to take a page from Simon and Garfunkel. And this is where I'm going to test out my new microphone that Christy bought me. Wake up, little Susie, wake up. We've both been sound asleep. Wake up, little Susie, and weep. The moon's over, it's 4 o'clock, and we're in trouble deep. That's basically where America is right now.
All right.
Yeah, it was looking back at the years under Clinton. I think some of the most radical protest movements we've had happened then, and I think Obama to some degree put people to sleep. There was Occupy Wall Street, but I think that Biden doesn't have that capacity to snow people that Obama had, and maybe.
Of course not. One's a corpse, the other one's actually alive.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not too enchanting.
All right, I think we can talk about this one last topic here that I do find interesting. Anthony Reyes said that Aaron Mate is the weakest link of the gray zone. There's other people in the chat that are saying that Aaron Mate was too kind to Joe Biden. What are your thoughts on that? I will say that I respect Aaron Mate's work on the OPCW report and Russiagate. But I will say that he has been a little bit too kind to Biden. And I want to hear your thoughts.
When? Like, just since he won, or in general?
In general, like, he was making the arguments to Jimmy Dore about how Joe Biden, he would rather fight Joe Biden because he's going to have less war hawks like Mike Pompeo alongside with him. He's still going to have war hawks, but they're going to be less war hawks than Mike Pompeo.
People.
Less war hockey.
They're still
What am I-
working.
what am I
There's still going to
supposed
be
to say?
intelligence affiliated officials that are going to be working under the Biden administration. We have the Bush people that are going to be in the Biden administration, like those kind of Republicans. So it's the same thing, just different people. Still the same club.
Yeah, well, there, you know, a lot of the Trump people are former Bush people.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing, Aaron Mate.
It's the
Yeah.
same dynasty of families. It's the same dynasty of people. You know, they're just 15 years removed. So everybody was 10 years old when the Bush people were in office, and they don't remember when Biden brings them back. And we just cycle through this every 20 years. And the collective memory is so short term that, you know, the resistance can't remember. They can't keep up.
You know what it is, honestly? This is what it is. Trump puts ketchup, mustard, mayonnaise, and relish on his sandwich. Biden is going to say, hold the mayo. That's basically what it fucking is, folks. Enjoy your sandwich.
It's just like I've seen this meme like on Twitter, like the Republicans are like a drone, like a airplane dropping some bombs on a country.
Oh, yeah. I've seen
But then the Democrats is just like like a jet with like BLM and a rainbow and like saying resistance, but we're still dropping bombs.
Yeah.
So I can play devil's advocate for a second. Do you think Biden could be better on Iran and Yemen than Trump has been? Is there a possibility there?
Iran, yes.
If I'm not
Yemen, no.
mistaken, he said he wants to sanction Iran. And as long as he continues to be an ally for Israel, and he has said in the past that he can be, if he were Jewish, he'd be a Zionist, or he said like, if he can still be a Zionist without being Jewish. So as long as he continues to be allied with Israel and Saudi Arabia, then the tensions with Iran are going to increase.
Reminds me of that comic book Watchmen, where the guy's like, I mean, you're not even actually Jewish. I mean, just what the I don't know. I mean, look, Aaron Mate, I mean, we love you. We want to snuggle with you. But I mean, like Joe Biden, he ain't gonna cut the mustard, okay? Like,
and I hope I see more great work from Aaron Mate. Like I said, I respect his work, but in terms of his belief on his stance on Biden, I disagree.
No, I'm sure it's good. I just don't read or watch it because I'm busy reading books written by people who died like 50 or 60 or 70 years ago, because that stuff's better than anything anybody's producing today, except for my stuff. My stuff's perfect, but you know.
All right, I think this is a good spot to close off. I thank you guys so much for coming on. You guys want to give a final shout out? Where can people find you, starting with Christy?
Oh, well, you can find me at Twitter at Christy Doff. Other than that, you can find me doing the Overwritten Report with Dak.
All right, Jeff?
Yeah, you can find my YouTube channel, The Bitter Pill. And you know, there's links to it on my Twitter, which is at LeftyVegan. And I also have a Medium blog, jeffmelton.medium.com.
And Dak?
They can find me at overwritten.org and at my YouTube channel, but I do want to say one thing. Donald Trump, since we're going to leave, I think Mariah Carey put it best when she said, I'd give my all to spend just one more night with you, because we're going to miss you, Trump. You know, you've been the zeitgeist for the last several years, and moving on from you is going to be like suffering from postpartum depression. I mean it, man. We're going to miss you so much.
Yeah, Dak looks like an intelligent artist.
For media are gonna miss him.
And Reed, where can people find you?
Your body next to mine.
You can find me on YouTube and Facebook, The Naturalist Capitalist, and I am back on Twitter at Reed Coverdale. Find me there.
All right.
I knew you'd be back.
And for sure, DJL7, shout out to you. You said nobody's perfect. That's true. And that's something we should all keep in mind in terms of people that we like and people that we don't like. We were talking about Tulsi Gabbard earlier. People should be open to criticism for her if you like her. And
Love
people who
Tulsi.
don't like her need to recognize that she isn't perfect. Same thing with anybody that we talk about that's involved in politics. So stay informed, everybody. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I love you guys.
Free Assange.
Free Assange.
I love you too.